Welcome back to the Nullified Take channel, where we've got the TNT takes for you on Australian Survivor episode 3, and we're going to be talking about the top 5 takes for this episode. If you want to see more of this content, be sure to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and put a like on this video. It helps immensely with being able to put my content out there and be discovered on the YouTube channel. Also be sure to tune in later on tonight, if you're available, at 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, as I go live with a few guests to talk about the first week of Australian Survivor in further depth. But without further ado, here's the top 5 takes for this episode. Number 1, Stevie is struggling socially within the game. Now, we do see him early on here in this episode doing Tai Chi with his tribe and trying to really get them all to connect. There seems to be a few people that are onto him, and specifically Shawnee has noticed that he tried to take a shot at her in that first episode. So this is very bad for Stevie. The fact that he came in with a plan for revenge and clearly going up against probably the best player so far this season in Shawnee, he is going to be found short. And her knowing about this, to me, means that his days in this game is going to be short going forward. She tried to target him this episode, and if it wasn't for another player who we'll talk about later on, who absolutely tanked their game, I think Stevie would have gone home in this spot. Now, we also saw a little bit of his bad gameplay when it came to talking to Mimi, when they were both on the chopping block prior to the tribal council, where I just really feel like that was an uncomfortable conversation to listen in on, and it really showed that he does struggle on that social game part of this game. But for me, Stevie is a fun character. I really hope he does make it a little bit further on. Him stepping up every single time for his tribe to take on the big dog and Sean really shows that he is a team player. And I think him being a team player is what is keeping him safe in this game up until this point. Simon has taken a liking to him, and Simon does have his back to a certain degree. The only problem for me so far is that Simon seems to always be outvoted on the vote. So it always seems to be going the way that Shawnee wants the votes to go. At least that is the way the edit is making it look at this point. Moving on to number 2, the Villains Tribe wins reward again. This was a fun reward. It was one with cookies. Now, I've always said that if I was ever on Survivor, the cookies reward would be one of the ones, or like the ice cream or anything that's sweet like that would be one of the rewards I really wouldn't be craving. I don't have a sweet tooth myself, and I really would want something that is actually sustenance, like real food that is going to fuel the body when you go into these challenges. But this one was a fun one because it did bring a lot of drama to this episode, this cookie jar, because there's a few players that have played the game before. All of them are aware that there may be some sort of an advantage or a reward in this cookie jar, and it also seems like some of these newer players were onto it pretty quickly as well. So with all of that happening, we do know that Simon ultimately gets the reward that is in there, and it looks like this little disc that was planted inside of the cookie jar after they come back from, I believe, the immunity challenge, because I'm pretty sure if it was there before, someone would have found it, especially maybe putting her hand in the cookie jar, which we'll talk about in a bit as well. I feel like she would have probably found it, or someone would have seen it at that point. It just laid on top of the cookies. So for me, it was definitely planted there after they went to the immunity challenge. The really, really big question point here is that, is that really an idol? Is it really a reward? Because there was no satchel with it. There's no instructions with it. Simon is wanting this thing to be an idol so bad so he can play it, but what is it? Did anybody else pick this up? What do you think about it? Do you think that it is a reward? It is actually an advantage? Or do you think that it is a fake idol planted maybe by production, something to throw the players off? And if it is a fake idol by production, how would you feel about that? Because for me personally, if it is a fake idol, I wouldn't be too happy. I think that fake idols should be created by the players. The production team should not try to go and get players. I really don't like it when the production team tries to fool the players. So give me your thoughts on that one. Number 3, George finds his next tattoo, or should I say idol, in the game. He goes out looking for this idol while everybody is focusing on stuffing their face with cookies. He now has some power in the game, and he says that Simon thinks that he's in control of the tribe, but with the idol, he is actually in control of the tribe. He does later on try and save Mimi, which is not going to work for him. So again, I don't know how much control he really has in the tribe. For me at this point, George really is a bit of a non-factor in the tribe. I don't think that he is a threat in regards to the strategy side of it, and everybody is using George as this tool in the game that they want to take deeper into the game so so that there is a threat bigger than them. And it is a strategy that you don't always see implemented by returning players. A lot of the times the big threats go after each other early on, and then you see all the big threats go home early. Shani doesn't want to fall into that trap, and she's definitely dragging him along as far as she can in this game. And it seems like Geordie is starting to also go down that road of wanting to take George with him deeper in the game, so that there's always someone that is going to get taken out in front of him. So it's going to be interesting to see if that strategy is going to work, or if it's going to buy George enough time to get these advantages in the game and to think himself out of the situation he is currently in. Who knows what will happen if he does end up linking back up with Hayley, because in this specific episode, there is that moment that him and Hayley talk after the immunity challenge, where he goes to Hayley and says exactly where he found the idol, and Hayley asks him if he has played his yet, and he says no. So clearly Hayley and George are going to work together to a certain degree this season. They are friends outside of this game, and I'm surprised that people aren't thinking that the two biggest threats in the game would potentially want to work together. So if there is a tribe swap at any time, I'm looking out for a George and Hayley reunion and potentially alliance. I don't think George will want to go to the end with Hayley, but I do think that he sees her as a mutually beneficial number at this time. Now, number 4, Mimi shows that she is her own person, and that being an own person is more important for her than her game. In Survivor, sometimes you've got to suck up your pride and follow the herd when it comes to making certain decisions. You're seeing Geordie do it to a big degree so far this season, and you've seen Simon having to do it a few times as well when things hasn't gone his way, and that's what's keeping them in the game. Now, with Mimi, it's a different story. She's a newbie in the game. She's very outspoken, like we saw in the previous episode when they went to go raid the hero's tribe. I feel like maybe Mimi was in the wrong tribe, and she saw herself as a bit more of a hero instead of a villain. But in this episode, she wanted to keep her individuality, and Geordie tells her, don't go look in the cookie jar unless you feel like you need something. And this makes her want to go look in there even more. So she gets up at night, she gets into the cookie jar, she gets caught with her hands in the cookie jar, literally, with Liz waking up and looking at her. I don't know if anybody else thought this, but when Liz woke up and got up and looked at her, it almost looked like something from The Rising Dead, that we're looking at her from behind. It's quite scary, with Liz giving her that stare, and I will say it took me a few seconds to realize who it was that was looking at her. But this gets Mimi in a lot of trouble, and people want to take her out because of this. But ultimately, Shani, she's got so much control in the game because she turns the whole vote away from Mimi, even after she looked for this advantage, to Stevie, because it's, again, something that's going to benefit Shani in the game, because Stevie wants to come for her, and she doesn't want any targets in the game or any threats in the game that is going to potentially take her out. So it really shows the amount of control she has in the game. But Mimi undo all this good work that Shani has done prior to the Tribal Council by just being very combative in the Tribal Council and really just showing that she's not much of a team player. Due to this combativeness of Mimi, Shani does end up taking her out, changing her mind, saying, let's just take out Mimi. And I think everybody is happy to go with that plan because they wanted her out in the first place. Now, the last take here, the 5th take for this episode, is Simon has complete tunnel vision at this point, and he finds what he believes to be this idol. He doesn't want to make the same mistake twice of going home with an idol in his pocket, or 2 idols in his pocket without playing it. So he really just wants to let it rip this time and play that advantage immediately, and he wants to take out the biggest target in his tribe, which is George. I don't think that Simon is incorrect for his game to take out George. Simon is coming into this game as someone that we looked at the Legacy Watch in the beginning of the season. He's not necessarily the biggest threat or necessarily the biggest game player coming into this season. So for him, George being in the game, how much does it really protect him? And I think that he wants to take out this person who he knows, if he gets a foothold in the game, is going to probably take control of it. He thinks it's dangerous to play with a snake, and probably it is, so he wants to take him down. He wants to be the Kingslayer. But ultimately, he's putting so much of his social capital into this move, and he's putting so much pressure on Geordie to try and make this move when Geordie is clearly not into it, that I don't think that is a good gameplay. Now, Geordie, I know from his previous season, is someone who wants to make big moves and who wants to take people out, but Geordie is playing a different game this season. He's trying to build trust, and he's trying to play the subtle game, which I think is the right lane for Geordie to be playing in, coming off his previous season where he was seen as somebody that was very untrustworthy. So you've just got conflicting priorities for different players coming into the season, and we're seeing it play out. Even though Geordie and Simon seem to be very close, Geordie is not going to play game on this vote. Now, will this come back to bite them in the end? That is going to be the question of the season. Simon, we finally get that scene where he walks up to the fire afterwards and he throws the hat in the fire. I thought it happened in episode 1, so it was a bit confusing seeing it again. But yeah, he burns the hat. There's clearly a vendetta. And I think the battle between Simon and George is going to be a big talking point this season. So far, I'm very high on this season. It's had a lot of action. It's got some great game players in here. It's got great storylines that are getting formed. So I'm all for it. I can't wait for next week. If you want some more content or deeper analysis of the first 3 episodes, be sure to join us later on tonight when we do our live, and catch you next time. As always, bye.